This is a party we had for him on his 80th birthday with my brothers and sisters, and I'm just there in the corner. We have a photo for a celebration of my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. We had a party here in the house, and Jackie's there with my brothers and sisters, and I'm there in the corner again. There's a photo of Jackie here having his breakfast. He's all dressed up with a sports jacket, which would be unusual for Jackie, so it must have been a very special day. This is a photo of the house and the farm buildings. Jackie initially resided in a caravan at the rear of our house, and as the family grew, my parents put on an extension to the house, and they also arranged to put on a bedroom and bathroom for Jackie at the rear of the house. I guess we were all primary school children when Jackie came to live with us, and we were all very young, so it wasn't strange. Children get used to situations, as we're all told, so he was part of our lives, our daily lives. He lived here, he had all his meals with us, and I suppose oddly he lived initially in the caravan at the rear of the house. This was a dry stock farm, smallish farm, and my father, to earn extra income, used to rent land and sow vegetables, and for that a lot of people were needed for the harvest. So in or about 1970, Dad was approached to say that there was this man, Jackie, who would like to come here, that he would like to work with Dad. And what had happened was Jackie had left the workhouse at 13 and gone to work on a farm as a farm labourer, which a lot of boys from the workhouse would have done at that time. And he was there from the age of 13 until the age of 62. And essentially what happened was that stopped being a working farm. So Jackie had nowhere to go at age 62. I think going to school, I think we all assumed, certainly I did, that the workhouse was purely related to the famine. And I don't think we thought beyond that. And it's interesting that Portumna Workhouse comes after the famine.
So I wanted to show you this room, Anne, because this would have been an important part of Jackie's everyday life at the workhouse. This was the dining hall most of the week, and at the weekends then it was the chapel as well.
Do you know what kind of food they would have been eating here?
Well, the answer to that is the food that was plentiful locally and cheap. So whether it was bread, vegetables, kind of gruel, whatever was easily obtained and cheap for the workhouse to supply. You know, the workhouse was not to attract people in. You would always get a little bit less than what was available on the outside. So if you were serving nice hot meals here, homely meals, you'd have a queue outside the door. So, you know, there was kind of a negative story coming out of the workhouse that the food was almost intolerable here to deter people from coming in.
That's really interesting when you put that in the context of the Jackie we knew, because I suppose he ate so sparsely. He would be encouraged to try everything, but the fare that Jackie would always choose would always have been the plainest. You know, he just wouldn't have, I suppose his taste buds never got any experience of anything else.
And Jackie would have came here first because he was classed as a foundling, I suppose. He would have been brought here by somebody from that local area. There's conflicting reports, maybe the age of 2 or the age of 3, that the babies then, or the toddlers at that stage, would have moved into either the boys or the girls block, depending on their sex. So this is the girls block here, but it's a replica of the boys block. So he would have shared a big dorm with all the other boys in the workhouse. Cold would have been the big thing here. Very, very drafty buildings. In the summertime, nice and cool, but in the wintertime, absolutely freezing. There's cases in different workhouses where the kids were upstairs and had to be moved down because some of them were actually dying of the cold. There was a kind of a bond between a lot of these kids who grew up and became adults in later life locally, that they shared their upbringing. And unfortunately, there would have probably been that stigma attached to growing up in the workhouse that probably never left them.
How were Jackie's circumstances different from other children that might be here?
Some of the other children that would have been here would have come in with their parents and their family. And those kids then would be able to see their parents throughout the day or throughout the week. A parent could request an interview with their child, but unfortunately Jackie wouldn't have had that. So while the other kids might have been looking forward to going to meet their mum in the afternoon on any given day, Jackie didn't have that luxury, I suppose.
So we're on the shores of Lough Derg. We're just on the border between Galway and Clare on this side of the lake, and on the other side of the lake would be the Tipperary side. So Jackie was found as an infant. The story was he was a day old. He was found on the Galway side in a place called Gorchini, and for a long time it was the case that it was thought that perhaps he'd been born in Clare. Because he was found in Galway, he came to Portumna Workhouse. Had he been born in Clare, he would have been taken to a workhouse in Scariff. However, there is another story, and that story is that he actually came from Tipperary. And that story is that his mother, or relatives of his, came across the lake on the 2nd of April 1908, when Jackie was a day or so old, and dropped him in County Galway at a house where another baby was expected to be born. We don't know the circumstances of his mother or his father. Undoubtedly, if they were married to each other, they might not have the financial resources to have reared a child. And that's one theory. Another theory is they may not have been married and his mother may have found herself pregnant. And if that were the case in Ireland of that time, it was a very, very difficult place. You had no way of rearing a child on your own unless you had the support of your family or extended family or some relation. So she certainly didn't have that. So she had to make a choice about Jackie's future. And I believe that she thought she was doing the right thing in bringing Jackie to a place where she knew a midwife was going to be calling, because that midwife was going to do something with that infant. So she was doing her best. So we traced his baptismal certificate from the parish records in Portumna, and he was baptised on the 27th of April 1908. We were hugely protective of the fact that Jackie's name was Gately. You know, we would never have said to anyone why he was called Gately. But people of my parents' generation and older knew why he was called Gately. There was a practice at the time that if children were found without parents, that they might be named after where they were found. So, for instance, a baby found in a field might be called Fielding, or they might be called Whitethorn, or in Jackie's case, he was found at a gate, and that's where the name Gately was given to him as a surname. So my father had a cine camera, and he would have taken hours of films, and we've some of those films still, and one of those is of Jackie cycling in the avenue on his bike. It's a particularly precious piece of film because I think all our memory every Sunday was Jackie cycling on the bike. He would go to Mass, he would go to a particular pub in town for his few drinks after Mass, and he would bring each of us home a precious snack bar, and we would sit out on the drive waiting for him to cycle in, and that's Jackie cycling in with our snack bars.